Welcome to a very special webcast, Golf Away Tours Webcast. We have the pleasure of being joined by a legend in Canadian golf journalism, a name that everybody will know, and that's Lorne Rubenstein. Lorne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Lorne, right now you're out in California, which is great because we can't golf here in Ontario, so it's a good place to be. And you've had some pretty awesome golf experiences the last few days. Tell us a little bit about where you've been the last few days.
Yeah, I've been on a bit of an Alister McKenzie tear, I guess you could say. A few weeks ago, I played Pasatiempo, where I really hadn't played there in 30 years or so. Of course, that Alister McKenzie did, along with Marion Hollins, who was getting inducted in the World Golf Hall of Fame this year. And McKenzie just did a magnificent job there. I mean, his greens and bunker complexes are always terrific. So that was a thrill for me to get out there again after not having played it, excuse me, in so many years. Then I went on and just golf being golf, I wrote an article about that. And a fellow here in the Palo Alto area read it. Sent me a note, said he was a fan of my writing and that my book on Dornoch had actually been the guide that he and his wife had used to go to Dornoch. And he invited me to his club here, which is called Green Hills, also an Alister McKenzie course, done in 1930. And then on just the other day, I was invited to play Cypress Point, where also I hadn't played in 30 years. And you know what, and your listeners will know what kind of a place Cypress Point is. It is just what a day I had there. I mean, I shouldn't say a day, it was just a morning. For the first 90 minutes of the day, they send out unaccompanied guests, as they're called. And I was on my own. They tried to set me up with a member there, but he wasn't available. So I went out as an unaccompanied guest with a caddy. You're required to take a caddy, which is great. It's part of the experience. My wife, Nell, walked along. We had a gorgeous morning, no wind really to speak of, totally blue skies. I mean, you could hear the seals out in the ocean. Every moment of the experience was just a joy, really. You felt one of those places you just felt really, really good to be alive. And I know that I was privileged to be there and to be invited there. It's so exclusive, it's difficult to get on, but I only wish people could have the experience of being there. I tweeted out a bunch of photos about it. And the response to those photos, people couldn't get enough of them. And I think that's because I realized why Cypress Point is not seen very much. Augusta National, of course, another McKenzie course, everybody knows it because they see it every year during the Masters and people feel familiar with it. But Cypress Point, except for the famous 16th hole across the ocean or the bay, I mean, is not very well known to people. So it was, I had a good time taking the photos. I had a good time playing. I only lost one golf ball. So that was kind of a good luck for me. And I'd love to get back there again. I'll probably, I won't be around in 30 years, but I hope I get there before.
Absolutely. And it's certainly on many people's bucket lists and near the top of mine, but obviously tough to get on, but it's such a pleasure, I'm sure, to be able to play it. So it's lucky for you.
But, you know, I just want to say one more thing, too. The day after Cyprus, and I've just written about that, and we'll be posting that later, I played a course here in Palo Alto. It was until a few years ago just called the Palo Alto Municipal Golf Club, or the Muni here. Sort of play Cyprus one day and then to play the Muni the next day. Now, it has been totally redone by the American Society of Golf Course Architect President Forrest Richardson, who lives in Phoenix, and he was up here for a couple of days and he invited me to play. So we played, it's called now Baylands Golf Links, and it is really good. I mean, it is open to everybody, a public golf course, municipal course, on a flat piece of property that he had sort of introduced some sort of land features so you could bounce the ball around and roll it around. And, you know, I really had as good a day there as I did at Cyprus, just in an entirely different way. It was the two kind of corners of the game, one ultra exclusive course and the other open to all. And it was busy. It was the same kind of beautiful day as I'd had at Cyprus. So, you know, it was such a contrast, but yet it was just golf, and it was just beautiful to play both places.
Well, that's the great thing about our game, right? Is that you can have both ends of the spectrum and enjoy both days just as much. And we get people going over to the UK and Ireland playing, obviously wanting to tick off the top courses, but so many of them play the other courses that a lot of people haven't heard of and have just as fun a time playing them. So that's what's great about the game of golf. So
You're right.
So many people know you obviously for having written a lot for the Globe and Mail over the years, and a lot of books that people will know, books on swings with George Knudson and Nick Price and Ben Hogan, and then obviously your book on Mo Norman was an exceptional read, a lot of great stories in there, and your book on Dornoch, which we'll get to a little bit later in the chat. But the one that really intrigued me was the book you wrote with Tiger Woods recently. Just because it's Tiger Woods and it's so many people don't get that close to him. And so I wanted to just get your story on how that came about and and your relationship with Tiger throughout the process.
Well, I'd gotten to know Tiger over the years just as a journalist and being at press conferences and asking him. I didn't get to know him all that well or spend that much one-on-one time with him. I remember one time I was invited to a breakfast with John Paul Newport of the Wall Street Journal, just the two of us having breakfast with Tiger at Isleworth, where he lived at the time near Orlando in Windermere, I guess, Florida. So, that was a good chance to get to know him and just speak to him and see the kind of things that interested him. And Tiger's, as you know, is a swing nerd. He loves to talk about the golf swing, loves to talk about golf course design. And so over the years, I had noticed that at the large press conferences that you have during every tournament he goes to, I mean, he has to do one, he does one before every tournament, and then afterwards in the scrums after his rounds, everybody wants to chat with Tiger, that he really got engaged when you asked him questions about his game and about the swing. And as I say, about course architecture, what was happening in the game, the long ball, that sort of a thing. And I had been at the 97 Masters that he had won when everybody knew him before then, because he'd won 3 consecutive US juniors and 3 consecutive US amateurs. And he was coming out and playing in his first Masters, his first major as a professional golfer, as a tour pro. And he goes out and shoots 40 on the front 9. And people were thinking, oh, well, this is a different game, the tour game. And he shot 30 on the second 9 and he won by 12. So it was coming up to the, well, it started with, actually, I should preface this by saying, as it was coming up to his 40th birthday in December of 2015, I approached Tiger and his team to see if I could do some sort of a story about him for a non-golf magazine. I knew that there'd be endless requests, tons of requests coming in for his time as he approached 40, one of those landmark birthdays. And I approached him to do a piece on him where I would just be interviewing him like you are me. And I would write an introduction and it would be published in a non-golf magazine, not Golf Digest, not Golf Magazine, nowhere like that. And he agreed to it. And so we sat down, I remember in 2015, it was November of 2015. We have a place, my wife and I, in Jupiter, Florida, and very close to where his office happens to be. I went down there and sat with him in his office for 2.5 hours and just talked to him for this article for Time magazine. And it came out just as he approached his 40th birthday there, and it was really well received because Tiger, because it was for a non-golf magazine, TJ, I was going to ask Tiger not only about the golf swing, but you couldn't avoid some of his personal life as well. What had happened in 2009 when his personal issues became public, and he crashed his car one evening into a pole after leaving home. And it was a tough time for him, and his private life became very, very public then. So we had to talk about that, and he was quite open about it. He really was. Not to get down into the weeds about it, but just enough that people would be satisfied knowing a bit more about what had led to that, what had happened, how he had sort of handled it. And so we included that, but it was mostly about his game and about the golf swing and approaching 40. And he was already having lots of injuries, back problems, and was out of the game at the time. I remember just chatting with him, and you could see he was having some problems. But the thing was published, as I say, it got a lot of attention. I mean, immediately it went around the world, as these things do, go viral. The Golf Channel called me that morning when it came out and wanted me on. And it was one thing to another, podcasts, interviews all over the place. And then not long after, it was coming up to the 20th anniversary of his Masters win in '97. And I thought, well, what could I do around, around that? Another landmark event. It was his kind of coming out party, you might say, where the world really saw what he could do at the professional level. So I approached him again to see if he'd be interested in doing a book in his own words about that '97 Masters, and he agreed. So we had to get it done in fairly short order to get it published before the 2017 Masters, just before. But I was in Florida, spent a lot of time in his office with him, sat down with him, we reviewed and we watched tapes of the '97 Masters. CBS sent me the whole telecast, every round, although there was a lot still available, even just in video and on YouTube. And it was fun for me as a golfer and a bit of a golf nerd myself to talk to Tiger about shots he hit, to ask him, he remembered all the shots he hit, the important shots, and a lot of shots that people won't even realize were critical, that he thought were critical and difficult, that he made. And we just went through that, and he was very engaging and helpful. As a matter of fact, nearing the end of the book, when we were going to submit it to the publisher, he thought it would be a good idea to flip the last two chapters, and make the second last chapter the last, and the last chapter the second last. And he was totally right. You would have thought he was an editor, because it was just the right idea, and the publisher agreed, and then the book came out. Unfortunately, he couldn't play that Masters, which we had anticipated he'd be able to, because he was still hurt and wasn't ready to play. But you could see from talking to him, sitting with him, he would get up every so often and do some kind of stretching exercise. But when he was watching video of the '97 Masters, you could see how much he really wanted to get back there in the arena and play, if he could solve his back problems. And as we all know, a couple of years later, he won the 2019 Masters. But you could see that he wasn't about to pack it in. And he came back, he won, and electrified the golf world again in 2019. For me, it was just, I've had the opportunity to do, books with some really great players. Nick Price obviously did the book about Mike Weir, as you were saying, did a book about Mo, did a book with Ledbetter about Ben Hogan. So, I've had great experiences, but that was right at the top of the list, getting to know Tiger and spending that time with him. So it was just really, really just fun for me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's incredible, and a cool story. You obviously motivated him to get back by watching all those videos to get back, and 2 years later he did, right? So that
must have been the key.
Yeah, that's it, absolutely. I remember it was when we went to Ireland back in 2015. You were in the process of setting all this up, because I think it was the next month that you met with Tiger for the first time. So, but anyway, so moving on to that trip. We had a great time over in Ireland in 2015 and up in the Northwest. Had some cool experiences up there. And we've just announced recently that we're doing a trip with yourself and Natasha Staniszewski for some lucky contest winners next year to around the same area of Ireland. So excited to get back there again with you. We had some cool experiences there. What do you remember about that trip over to Ireland?
Well, first of all, I had been to Ireland many times, but I'd never been to that corner of Ireland, Northwest Ireland there, Rosa Penna and Enniscrone and other courses. And so many things I remember. One of the craziest things, of course, was trying to get television. It had nothing to do with the golf courses, but we were trying to get somehow satellite TV late one night with the time difference to watch the Blue Jays playing in their series, the American League Division Series, against Texas Rangers, I think. And that was the game we watched, the fifth game, the deciding game of the best 3 of 5 late at night. There was when the famous bat flip, the epic bat flip of Jose Bautista after hitting that 3-run home run that gave the Jays a 6-3 lead, and they went in to win the series and go to the championship series. But, what that was all a part of was, there were some people on the trip that I knew. There was some I didn't know that well. And there's a certain camaraderie that happens on these kinds of trips that is really fostered, first of all, through the way you organize these trips, never crazily hectic. You have time to spend on the golf course and off the golf course, getting to know the people you're with through dinners and just chit chats and having drinks, that kind of a thing. And that's one of the things I always remember about that trip is, some of the new friends that I made. And of course, I can't forget the golf. I hadn't played, as I say, Enniscrone, Rosa Penna, managed to get Pat Ruddy, who's a great character in Irish golf, and a writer and a good player. He developed the European club down near Dublin, and he came up and visited us one day and hung out with him, which I know everybody enjoyed. And then just going out with you, and you're a much better player than I am, and it was fun to just be around you and be around the people on the trip. You know, it was just one enjoyable time after another. Going out in the evening when we were finished, you might say, our day's play, hey, let's go out and play a few extra rounds and or a few extra holes, and we did that. So it was, you know, to play Enniscrone, Rosapenna, Donegal, places I'd never been, was just so much of a trip for me, you might say, to use 60s language. You know, I love links golf, and I can't wait to get back there with Natasha and with the prize winners here. It's really going to be a lot of fun, and I know people will enjoy it.
And they will, obviously. I echo your statements. I had a great time just getting to know yourself and some others on the trip, and hearing stories from you throughout the trip. And it was just a very memorable trip. And I'm sure next year's will be equally memorable for everybody that gets to go on it. You've obviously been over, as you said, to Ireland a number of times, and to Scotland even more so. And we'll get into Dornoch in a little bit. But if you were to compare the two, I get asked the question all the time, which do you prefer, Ireland or Scotland? If you were to compare the two, what would you say were the main differences between the two in terms of just a golf trip to either Ireland or Scotland?
You know, I mean, they're both phenomenal places to visit because there are so many, as you say, well-known courses in Ireland. You know, Royal Portrush for one, let's say, where they've had the Open recently. Scotland, everybody knows. Ireland is perhaps a little bit less known. Maybe not. People may go to Scotland before they go to Ireland and fill up their bucket lists, as they say. But to me, each is equally good. I mean, Ireland has got you know, the small town golf in Ireland. It's great in Scotland too, but in Ireland somehow the small town golf maybe is just for me even more enjoyable because it's not as well known, and the people are really happy to see you. They welcome you. I don't mean to say that they don't in Scotland, but just in Ireland, if you go to some out of the way places there in the small towns where there are really wonderful links court 9-hole courses. I remember, you know, driving along some country road one day and seeing a 9-hole course. I think it was called Spanish Point. Just walked up there and, you know, put, I don't know what it was, 10 pounds or something in the honesty box on the first tee. No clubhouse, no nothing, going out and playing, and you know, just having a wonderful time. And Ireland, there's all kinds of small courses like that are just fun to play. And it's just not, as you would say, highly developed as a lot of Scottish golf is. And it's just easy to get around, I found. Scottish golf I love too, and I love the same thing about it, getting around to the small towns. I mean, I always advise people, this is your business, not mine, but I always advise people and they ask me to go over when they're going over, well, I've got 10 days in Ireland or Scotland, what should I do? I'd say, well, I know you want to play the famous so-called championship courses, but for every one of those you play 2 lesser known courses, because people will really welcome you. They'll be happy you're there. The prices are going to be reasonable. You're going to really enjoy yourself at those courses. So that's what I always try to do, to invite people or suggest that they mix their experiences there, and always leave time to, you know, I remember one time being in Killarney and going to visit the local bookshops. As a writer, I'm always looking for the local bookshops or the good coffee shops and try to get a flavor of the town. And you know, you can do that very easily in both Ireland and Scotland. So it's hard to choose between them. I'd say to people, go to both of them if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two separate trips.
Separate trips, exactly. I always say the same thing that you were saying there, that nothing against the Scots. They're great people and always treat you well, but there's something different about the Irish people. They're so proud of where they're from. They want to show it off, is what I like to say. And that's why they really welcome you in. So that's the main difference for me. But you've spent obviously a lot of time in Scotland and Dornoch in particular, writing the book on the place. And how did that come about? What made you go to Dornoch in particular?
Well, I'd been to Dornoch very early on in my Scottish golf experiences back in the early 70s. I went there. I went there, and first time was in 77 when I could play better golf. I had entered the British Amateur, and which was in England at Ganton. At that time, you could enter the British Amateur without even having to qualify if you were a 3 handicap or better. which I was at the time. And in advance of that, I went up to Dornoch, which I'd heard about. I'd read Herbert Warren Wynn's famous article in the New Yorker called North to the Links of Dornoch. And so I did. I flew into, I think it was Glasgow, and it was a 7-hour ride by train and bus at the time around those big lakes or lochs, as they're called then. They didn't really have bridges then. So it was 7 hours up to Dornoch, and I went there really just intending to spend a day or two, but I liked it so much, the remoteness of it, the connection with Donald Ross, who was born there, lived there, and learned, all about golf course architecture and design on that golf course. And I spent not 1 or 2 days there, but I spent 10 days there. I liked it so much. But in all my years since then, I had never gone back. I'd been over to the Open Championship many, many times in Scotland, but never gone back up to Dornoch. And I just decided, it was 2000. I'd written about the game already for quite a long time. And I thought, you know what, I want to go live for a whole summer there. And Nell, my wife, who isn't a golfer, but loves the outdoors, and she knew we talked about the Highlands, seen video about it, and she agreed to accompany me there for the 3 months. And that was the whole idea, to spend a whole season there, get to know the golf course, the people, the whiskey, the Highlands music. We found kind of a flat, kind of a funky, almost seedy flat above the local bookshop in Dornoch, about a 5-7 minute walk from the first tee, and lived there for the whole 3 months. It was perfect that it was above a bookshop, because I got to know the owner of that bookshop really well, Leslie, and she became, and the bookshop became a character, you might say, in the book, a whole chapter. And I'm still in touch with her. When I was last in Dornoch about 18 months ago, went over to her place with her husband James and had dinner there. They lived just outside town on top of a hill overlooking the ocean there. It was just great. So I just lived there in the summer and wrote about the history of the Highlands, about the golf, about the links, about the development of the links. Got to know a lot of people, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. Dornoch has always been a very special place to me, and it was the right decision for me to get away from the pro game and writing about the game and go to a place where golf is the central aspect of people's lives there. They don't care what you do there. If you're walking down the street and you start talking to somebody and you're talking about golf, they'll ask you what your handicap is before they'll ask you what you do for a living, for example. And, I made so many good friends there. And as I was saying, even at the beginning of our chat here, TJ, it's, as Marlene Street says, golf is the friends you make along the way. And having friends, that's already 20 years ago, 21 years ago. And Nell and I I'd been back a few times, but Nell hadn't been back until I think it was 2019. So we went back together, and it was like she had been there just yesterday, because the experience was so sharp and so memorable that there wasn't anything about it she didn't remember. She was a great help in the book, and I still love it there, and I'm really looking forward to going there again before too long.
Well, and I'll tell you, most people that we talk to about going up to Dornoch, there aren't many that we talk to that haven't read your book. I think it's a great book to read before anybody goes up there. So if people haven't seen it, A Season in Dornoch, it's a fantastic read. So what do you think about going back?
I'd like to go back. Hey,
all right, let's do it. Let's do it.
It's a long ways from California, but I'm ready. Let's go.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good segue, because we're going to do that, aren't we, Lorne? We're going to do a trip in next April, and we're going to invite everybody along, whoever wants to come along. It's going to be an incredible experience. So we're announcing that right now. Anybody who wants to go over to Dornoch with Lorne Rubenstein and play some golf over there and hear some stories and meet some great people, tell people what they're going to expect on this trip with you over to Dornoch.
I love showing people the Dornoch that I know. Just a quick example. A couple of years ago, my last trip there, actually, I took a very close friend of mine, probably my closest friend, Jerome Lyons. He's a physician in Toronto. He's not the keenest golfer. He plays once a week at Don Valley in Toronto. But, I told him, I want to take you to Dornoch and show you the Dornoch I know. He'd never been there. So we went, and it was fantastic for me. And it was kind of a microcosm of the trip that we're going to do in April. I want to show people the Dornoch that I know. I want to introduce them to people that I know, like the amazing Alan Grant, who's one of the great, great characters. I've ever met anywhere in the game of golf. I hope he'll have dinner with us one night. He'll tell us stories. He's a member at Dornoch. And those are the kinds of people that I want to introduce people to. I want them also just to come to appreciate the town, what it has to offer, the whiskey. I hope we'll have a whiskey tasting one evening there at a spot, and go around that golf course and just roam around it, play it, hit those shots along the ground, get up in the clubhouse there with the big picture windows overlooking the course as people come in the late light. And also go up to, other courses like, to play Brora, Tane, maybe Golspie. There's so many right there. Dornoch will be the centerpiece for sure. We'll have a few rounds there, but we'll get out to some other courses, some other links in the area as well. And for me, it's just going to be so much fun, so rewarding to show people the Dornoch that I know. It'll be much more than just getting into a tour bus with 60 people, going up, rushing out to the first tee, and then getting back in the tour bus after. That's not the kind of golf I really like, although I know people want that. This is going to be a fairly, limited group that I can handle, and that we'll just have some fun with. Along the way, I'll play golf with everybody at Dornoch at one point or another. And I think they'll really get to experience in a short time, in a week or 10 days, the microcosm of what I saw and felt and came to know there in the summer of 2000. And everybody who goes there, as you know, is enchanted by Dornoch. And that's what I want to create in this trip. Is I don't have to do much to create it because it's there. As soon as you drive in there, you know that this place is remote, it's special. And, if they have tremendous championships there, amateurs, everybody who goes there wants to get back. I mean, I can't think of anybody who's gone to Dornoch and has not felt, wow, no wonder people have been talking about this place for years. So I really appreciate your inviting me to lead this trip, and I'm so looking forward to it.
Well, that's great. And I'm looking forward to it as well. I've been lucky enough to get up to Dornoch a couple of times. I love it there, but haven't really been ingrained in the town, obviously, as you have. So excited to go over there with you and lead this group and just show people and what's there and what the town's all about. And you can just hear from your voice the passion that you have for that place. And we're excited to share that with our clients that'll come along. And as you said, it will be a small group. It won't be a large group. We're going to max it out at 16 people, so it'll be an intimate group, and we're really looking forward to doing that with you. So yeah, we'll have that information out to people shortly, and they can sign up, and we'll look forward to it next April.
Can't wait. 11 months away from we're talking right now. I'm ready.
That's right. And hopefully, obviously, the world's in a much better place by that time, and we don't have to worry about everything we're worrying about right now. But Lorne, thanks so much for doing this. It's a pleasure chatting with you always. Love hearing your stories, and enjoy the rest of your time in California. And hopefully we'll get a game in when you get back here to Ontario and the courses open up.
I look forward to that, TJ. Thank you very much for including me in these plans. It's just terrific.